A black-haired girl dressed in red, who hails from the southwestern lands and is at the age of 15, will end the coming age of darkness and despair. La maga de la Fogile e de la Sabbia, la bruja de Hoja y Arena, la sorcière de Feuille et du Sable, die Zauberin aus Bled und Sand, der Tornaris van Blad and Sand. Ha to Suna no Majo. In loving memory of Isao Takahata, the greatest colleague and mentor of Hayao Miyazaki and co-founder of Studio Ghibli, the 40th anniversary of which this story commemorates. The Sorceress of Leaf and Sand, a grand tale set at the very end of the 5th age of the world of Sakaya. In the midst of the Arpan-Thuban War, the Thubanians invaded the kingdom of Basilia that lies in the northwest of the island continent of Aetherosia, and have killed its king. Now his 17-year-old daughter, Princess Hilda, tries to stop the goblin soldiers from seizing some very important documents that pertain to the use of the golden orb, but her life is now at stake. Hand us the papers, Princess Hilda. Our august Emperor Tarius needs them for the war. In the name of my father, King Vertus, and of the Queen of Arpan, whom I both serve with unswerving loyalty, I won't. Please be nice to us and hand us the papers, or else we'll shoot your brains out. Never, you nasty goblins, for I shall give these documents to Her Majesty Queen Herida herself. Oh, so you'll refuse to accept our demands for the interests of the Bania, you little coward. Yes, I will. But the needs of Queen Herida far exceed those of yours, so come forth and take these documents if you can. Everyone, seize her! Let's throw her into the ship, now! Get off of me, you nasty goblins, and if you ever remove the crown off of my head, you shall dishonor the house of Basil forever. Thanks for these papers, ma'am. They're for Tarius the Just to keep. Now stay safe and enjoy the ride. Curse you. We've just vanquished those pesky goblins, your royal highness, and keep these documents with you as we escort you into the airship for your safety. Thank you so much, my brave, loyal subjects. And so the Basilian soldiers flew their royal highness high over the burning ruins of their kingdom and straight towards the Western Isles in order to keep the documents safe from the clutches of the Thubanians. But along the way, the Basilians' airship, which was provided for them by the Empress of Arpan, was met with a furious barrage of searchlights and gunfire spewing out from the ground below, and the fate of the kingdom of Basilia was sealed that night. But meanwhile, far off in the southwestern lands, Keiko-chan, do you think these apples are good enough for us to eat? And we need at least 40 of them for the big party tomorrow. Yes, Oka-san, and we haven't found at least one apple which shows signs of a worm eating it. Dear Setsuko, you and your family have all been invited to come over to my house for my 15th birthday party at 8:30. Please be sure to bring me some very special gifts or sweets for the occasion. Yours truly, Keiko Yamamoto. Please send these 2 invitations to my friends Yoko and Yukiko, Hyugen and Moonen. And please send this 3rd invitation over to my friend Setsuko Yatagarasu. On the day the last Trian dies, the golden master orb shall fall upon the lonely tree, and 2 dragons of steel shall plunder the entire land for control over it and its awesome power to conquer and destroy. But only a black-haired sorceress dressed in red, who hails from the southwestern lands and is of the age of 15, can end the coming age of darkness and despair. Only she can use her mastery of water, earth, air, and fire to foil the plans of the dragons of steel. Only she can turn their delusional ways of greed, might, and ill will into compassion, kindness, and love for others. Only she can bring them to justice with the trust of the gods and spirits of nature, and only she alone can destroy the golden master orb with her magic, so that once she is raised from the ashes, the sorceress of leaf and sand shall witness for herself the sight of 100,000 white birds flying over the forest of hope. The prophecy of the West in the 3rd age of the world of Sakaya. For over 50 long years, a war over the possession of the Golden Master Orb, and thus the dominion of the entire world, has ravaged the island continent of Aetherosia. But in the southwestern lands, which have not been affected by the war that is raging abroad, a young mage named Keiko Yamamoto has lived a pastoral life with a caring family. But on the day she turned 15 and her magical education came to an end, she was given a few special gifts for her birthday. A new crimson dress that came with a wide-brimmed hat and a pair of black boots, a magic staff for her to channel forth her power, and a scrying stone for her to look into the past and the future, and to see people, places, and events from afar. On the evening right after her birthday party, Keiko donned her new outfit in front of her father, and she was curious to know about the ancient text that he was constantly reading at his study. Itoshi then told his daughter that the text had to do with some ancient spells that the Trians made regarding the creation and destruction of their most sacred possession, the Golden Master Orb. But that night, a huge, mysterious airship crash-landed onto a grassy field near the Yamamoto's house, and Keiko joined the other residents of the southwestern lands in rescuing the ship's victims. But of all the survivors who eventually succumbed to their wounds, it was Princess Hilda who gave the mage a few mysterious documents for her to throw into the flames, but not without heeding some very important advice. Please go into the Forest of Hope and find the golden orb that sits upon the lonely tree before the goblin empires of Arpan and Thuban do so. The next morning, the residents of the southwestern lands heard the roaring of hundreds of aircraft engines, and they looked up to see an entire fleet of Imperial Thebanian Army airships, bombers, fighters, and transports tearing across the partly cloudy spring sky. At the head of the fleet was Emperor Tarius the Just of the Thebanian Empire, who landed the wild blue yonder, his personal armored juggernaut of a warplane, in the middle of the lands, stepped out onto a wide, grassy hill with his entourage, and goaded the people of the southwestern lands into joining his ambitious enterprise, lest they face total annihilation. But upon hearing that the Golden Orb documents have all been burned at the hands of the Yamamoto's daughter, he had them captured, while Keiko was taken into the safety of the borderland woods by the little elf Robbie Hyde and his wife's pet raccoon, Vicky. And it was from them that Keiko learned about the ancient prophecy of the West, a prophecy that she was destined to fulfill right before the world's ending, drawn in the form of a great tapestry forged by elven hands that stood in the middle of the cave. And with that in mind, Keiko, Robbie, and Vicky all ventured together into the vast, swampy forests of the Green Marshes, and it was there that the trio found out that the resident nature gods and spirits were no longer trustworthy of man due to his rising arrogance and indifference towards the natural world. But Keiko and her friends were nonetheless able to give a sick forest spirit a few magic herbs in order to cure it of the contaminated and polluted food and water that it just consumed. All throughout her journey across the Green Marshes, Keiko used the power of her magic and spells to overwhelm and undo the plans of the Arpanian and Thebanian empires to drain the wetlands and industrialize the land, with much pollution involved. And with forests growing over the ruins of factories, the maid took her friends on a calm canoe ride across the swampy woods where the tall cypress trees grew. But once the trio reached a lone, narrow river that flowed through a tall ravine, Keiko summoned a lone vine that was hanging above the river to swing her and her friends to the other side as giant, hungry alligator spirits lunged and snapped at their heels. And as the sun sank under the woods, the trio stumbled upon a giant oak tree, spent the coming night sleeping upon its branches, and were soon startled from their slumber to find a small herd of tall-crest forest gods browsing upon the leaves under the light of the full moon. On the following day, the trio entered the market town of Bedford, and Keiko used her magic to pacify a swarm of attacking little tree spirits that were terrorizing its residents. As the three travelers reached the northern lands of the Green Marshes, they all came across a stream and were quite surprised to find two flamingo-headed river spirits fighting over a lump of fish-shaped trash that was probably thrown into the river by careless men or goblins. And Keiko turned it into an actual fish that was as long as a man's arm, with a quick snap of her fingers. And once the trio soon went to fetch some water at the edge of a small waterfall, they were all caught unawares by a small company of knights led by Beziel the Bold, who were patrolling the southernmost frontier lands of the county of Comtea. and despite a tense encounter in which Keiko tried to use her magic to scare off the knights' horses, and the knights tried to pin her down in turn and prosecute her for being a witch, she and Bezio laid aside their differences and soon came to amicable terms with one another in their shared goals of stopping the long war between the Arpanian and Dubanian empires that has ravaged their shared homeland, the island continent of Aetherosia, and their commitment to a better, more peaceful world worth fighting for. And so it was that Keiko continued to lead Robbie and Vicky the raccoon across the northern frontier of the Green Marshes, with an even loftier goal in mind that she shared with Beziel the Bold. And along the way, the travelers were able to purchase 3 individual tickets to board the fabled magical Black Valley Express. At the insistence of Vicky, who knew that doing so was the easiest way for them to reach the lands where the county of Comptea and the Black Mountains meet, and after having risked their lives wandering across the infamous and treacherous Swamp of Sorrows, the trio soon ascended the top of the 750-foot-tall watchtower of Udul Hadun, which was once built in ancient times by the kings of the West to watch over their lands, and soon used for the same purpose by the Count of Comptea, and they were all treated to a magnificent view of the many vast lands that lay beyond the Green Marshes. The trio also spotted not only the Black Mountains looming in the distance, but also their namesake train heading towards where the southernmost station is. After Keiko promptly assumed her bird form to fly her friends over to the station and boarded the train with them for Comptea and its neighboring mountains, she came across dozens of terrified children, many of whom were orphans who had lost their parents to the war, huddled in threes in some cars at the back, with a few women or seniors to protect them. And it was from the personal accounts and stories of those shell-shocked refugees that Keiko learned about the devastating toll that the Dubanian bombers have brought to the cities and towns of Arpanian allied countries further south. The mage also dined with her friends in a car that was called the Marvelous Mockingbird and looked more like a pub than the usual dining car, and upon stepping out of the train at their destination, the travelers were greeted with a shower of leaflets that came from a passing Dubanian warplane. That it was in the Arpanian allied human kingdom of Paisana that Keiko and her friends witnessed nearly 100 soldiers struggling to fight off the giant mechanical war elephants of the Imperial Dubanian army, and she also lovingly brought forth magical bowlfuls of fruits, meats, veggies, and her own special herbal medicine to feed and tend to the needs of the injured and wounded Paisanan soldiers at the request of their wary commanders and officers as their daily rations dwindled. After doing those arduous tasks and using her magic to help the county of Comptea and Beziel the Bold and the Arpan Thuban War, Keiko led her friends further up into the valleys of the Black Mountains. They hiked across expanses of steep, rolling hills that were dotted here and there with many firs and pines, and the verdant meadows were in full bloom with fields of wildflowers that came in different shades of blue, yellow, white, red, pink, and purple. But along the way, the three travelers will also soon stumble upon a giant Quetzalcoatl's god named Arashi, who happens to be the guardian spirit of the entire land. Yet Keiko's hike across the Black Mountains, however, did not go unnoticed, for the rulers of the Arpanian and Therbanian empires both perceived the Sorceress of Leaf and Sand and her magic spells to be a major threat to their own plans for the colonial conquest of Aetherosia, the exploitation of the island continent's raw materials, natural resources and minerals, and the enslavement and subjugation of its various peoples. But the bold and steadfast Keiko kept on holding back the attacks and threats of her goblin assailants, one by one. One day she stopped a battalion of Arpanian tanks and a Therbanian fighter plane from harassing panic-stricken indigenous civilians, and another day she flew off in her bird form to fend off an assault from the wild blue yonder and its fighter escorts by daringly facing them head-on. But Arashi the Quetzalcoatlus was quick to reassure Keiko and her friends that his fellow nature spirits were on her side and will soon protect her from the assaults of the goblins. And soon he flew the three travelers in a straight path over the hills and mountains, and across the partly cloudy skies toward the floating island kingdom of Luftia, the last surviving realm of the legendary skyfarers of old is. The queen of that country was eager to seek Keiko's magical aid in the defense of her rich kingdom from the attacks of the Arpanian and Therbanian air fleets, and she rewarded the mage for her services with some special gifts and made her a heroine of Luftia. Afterwards, following a tense encounter with some goblin airships, Arashi proceeded to fly Keiko and her friends east and back towards the meadows of the Black Mountains, and as the sun was sinking he landed the trio close to the foot of a great grassy hill upon which stood a quaint little cottage that was home to Greta, a young girl who was roughly Keiko's age, as well as her kind grandmother and mother. This little family lovingly provided the tired Keiko and her friends with a few refreshing evening meals and tea, as well as a decent place for them to sleep. On the following day, the family provided a morning breakfast for the travelers, and Keiko thanked those women for their hospitality before she and her friends left their cottage for the dangerous Forest of Despair, which lay right below the hill to the east of the Black Mountains, and was teeming with giant fell serpents that could kill a man with their lethal venom. But Keiko was able to fend off the serpents with her magic spells, until at last she had finally broken a curse which had kept the residents of the Therizinosaur forest god dormant for centuries. Keiko, Robbie, and Vicky all paid their respects to the great forest spirit, left the Forest of Despair, and soon reached the westernmost outskirts of the vast and expansive Silver Plains. And it was there that they stumbled upon a small flock of strange, kangaroo-like dinosaurs that were known as steppe swans. Keiko bonded with and mounted one, and nicknamed it Kyofu, which means strong wind in the tongue of her ancestors. And when a fleet of Dubanian warplanes led by Tarius the Just swooped in to hunt down the steppe swans for sport, Keiko proceeded to lead the flock away from their sudden onslaught, and used her magic to trick and distract the warplanes into hunting a different fake target, while she and the steppe swans escaped in another direction. Afterwards, Kyofu continued to take Keiko and her friends on a bounding ride across the Silver Plains to where the Sands of Fate are, all while the free peoples of Aetherosia, who were busy fighting off the Arpanians and Dubanians, were about to face their darkest hour. Upon reaching the winding dunes of the Sands of Fate, Kyofu continued to guide Keiko and her friends around there for the first half of the journey, and he soon left the travelers to walk across the dunes on their own for the second half. Although they sweltered at times under the scorching heat of the midday sun, Keiko and her friends were able to conjure or find enough sources of water to quench their thirst. And along the way, they encountered serpent-like lizards, which jumped through the sand like dolphins in the ocean, a tribe of scimitar-wielding sand elves who were well versed in the riddles and lore of the desert, and many tribes of horse-riding men who fought each other over its few remaining water holes. Keiko also used her magic to disrupt the oil-wielding activities of the goblins. Sometimes, with the use of sandstorms, she conjured herself, and soon she and her friends discovered a secret underground passageway to the Hells of Fire, which was guarded at the end by a fierce half-centipede, half-human demoness. After defeating her in a battle, the demoness kindly showed the trio the path to the fabled land of cliffs and cacti. And it was there that Keiko, Robbie and Vicky all came face to face with Julius, a ferocious, fire-breathing Carcharodontosaur desert god who has an infamously bad temper. Yet despite his fearsome, dragon-like reputation, Julius was quick to use his aggressive temperament and fiery breath to guard the sorceress and her friends, once Keiko calmly and kindly reassured the dinosaur god that she is not affiliated with any of his former goblin or human oppressors, and that she'll protect him with her compassion or magic if necessary. And after Julius helped Keiko out in many of her endeavors, and led her and her friends across the Hells of Fire, through the narrow passes of the Red Mountains, and down to the edge of the Great Canyon which separates the Forest of Hope from the desert lands of the East, all whilst encountering the last surviving Fire Maiden, Tara Karanteka, and her ferocious pet salamanders. The sorceress and her friends all paid their respects to the Carcharodontosaur desert spirit, and Arashi soon arrived to fly the trio across and high over the canyon and straight towards where the legendary Fork Cliffs, which mark the southernmost borders of the Forest of Hope, are. But along the way, Keiko and her friends could see that the airships and warplanes of the Arpanian and Dubanian air fleets were heading in the same exact direction as they were, and the mage quickly warned the local human civilians to leave and seek higher ground to take shelter before the goblin armies arrive for the final battle. At the edge of the Forest of Hope, Keiko, Robbie Hyde, and Vicky soon discovered that Emperor Tarius the Just had recently built the giant, spiraling factory fortress of Gunhades, which was pumping out great amounts of toxic, polluting smoke from its tall smokestacks as small warplanes flew around its many turrets, and newly built tanks rolled out from its walls to assemble and marshal his industrialized army for a massive assault upon the Arpanian positions that were within striking distance of the great lonely tree, as well as upon much of the surrounding forest itself. Then the sorceress led her friends on a daring but well-planned infiltration of Gunhardies, used her magic to disable much of the fort's assembly lines and other forms of industrial infrastructure, and fought off the many goblin guards which stood in her way, until at last she reached and opened the doors of the Dubanian Emperor's military headquarters and throne room, and politely demanded him to peacefully give up his warmongering ways, call off his upcoming attack on the Forest of Hope, and allow her to deal with the Arpanians in a similar diplomatic way. But although Tarius the Just initially and haughtily scoffed at Keiko's words, and got livid at her for trying to question his authority, and challenged the sorceress to a magical duel, which ended with the collapse of his fortress by the pounding of her magic staff, he soon reluctantly accepted Keiko's demands for a just peace, only for her to witness bombers on both sides raining destruction from above onto the Forest of Hope below. In the enormous ensuing battle which determined the fate of not only all of Aperosia, but also that of the entire world of Takaya, the huge armies and air fleets of the Arpanian and Dubanian empires, as well as those of their loyal human allies, clashed over the possession of the Golden Master Orb, and turned much of the Forest of Hope into a blazing inferno of burning trees and logs. Yet amidst this chaos, the Comtean army, led by Beziel the Bode, tried to pacify the goblins, and so did Keiko in her attempts to prevent any further harm to the sacred old-growth forest and its inhabitants. But in her greatest time of need, the gods and spirits of nature arrived to help Keiko turn the tide against the goblin troops, and when she was knocked over by the trunk of a Mechazon, or mechanical war elephant of the Dubanian army, Julius courageously rushed in to save her life by fending off the beastly war machine with the use of his horns, jaws, and fiery breath. And once she recovered, Keiko finally did the unthinkable deed of climbing up the lonely tree, placing the tip of her staff upon the golden orb, and reciting an ancient, mysterious, and powerful spell in the Troyanian language, which shook the whole world and destroyed the magical object of power and domination over all others, once and for all. The gigantic and fiery explosion which scattered and blew away the airships, tanks, soldiers, and warplanes of the Arpanian and Dubanian armies also obliterated much of the Forest of Hope and its surrounding lands, until they became barren, desolate wastelands, riddled with ash and smoke, and seemingly devoid of life, until large crowds of excited human spectators could see with their own eyes a massive herd of dinosaurian and pterosaurian nature gods and spirits arriving and gathering in a big circle around the spot where Keiko's hatless and seemingly lifeless body lay. Then they all repeatedly exhaled in unison, so that they made magical swirls of golden dust which danced around her, and they all slowly began to lift all their heads up in unison. Then everyone gasped and watched in awe as Keiko's body, which was illuminated by a shining golden aura, steadily rose high into the air until it stopped as a great flock of 100,000 white cranes tore across the clear blue sky as a field of seedlings, which emerged in the presence of the nature spirits, rose up to become large, mature trees as the Forest of Hope, including the once destroyed lonely tree, quickly recovered and regrew into its former state. And once Keiko opened her eyes to the sight of the white birds, thanked the gods and spirits for helping and supporting her in her greatest time of need, and stood up upon the golden aura to face the crowds with a smile. Everyone cheered with much elation, for the ancient prophecy of the West had at last been fulfilled. The teenage girl soon rose down with a graceful twirl and regained her hat, and upon touching the ground, Beziel the Bold ran up to her with much delight, lifted her up by the waist, and spun her around like a father playing with his daughter, much to the joy of Robbie Hyde and Vicky the Raccoon, as well as to the whole cheering crowd of bystanders, including Keiko's parents and siblings. And as the Arpanians and Bebanians left the newly risen Forest of Hope, and eventually all of Aetherosia for good, the world recovered as forests and deserts spread here and there, as nature and nature spirits took over the landscape and healed it of its wounds, as the humans rebuilt their cities, towns, and villages, and learned to peacefully coexist with nature, and as Keiko began to start a new, peaceful life with Beziel, Robbie, and Vicky. And the sixth age of Sakaya, an age of everlasting peace and tranquility, thus finally began.